I'm Dwayne Smith. I'm the Senior Vice Provost and Dean of the Office of Graduate Studies. And every year I have the privilege and pleasure and task of overseeing the selection of distinguished university professors. And for those who are selected, there's always the practice that they then make a presentation sort of as their coming out party. 2 years ago, Dr. Carolyn Ellis was named the Distinguished University Professor, but our schedules just did not allow us to be able to do the presentation last year. So here's the coming out party today, and we very much appreciate having you here to be a part of it. To introduce Dr. Ellis is a person who has served as her co-author on a number of things, and there are other things in her life as well that he's been involved, and that's Dr. Art Bachner. So Art, we're going to ask you to do the privilege of introducing Carolyn.
Thank you, Glenn. I am honored to have this opportunity to introduce Distinguished University Professor Carolyn Ellis to you. Oh, I could tell you stories. The first time ever I saw her face, I thought the sun rose in her eyes. By a stroke of luck or caress of fate, this day would turn out to include one of those precious moments after which nothing in my life would ever seem the same. The scene, a bright winter day in January 1990. The place, the College of Business. The event, a lecture on systematic sociological introspection to be given by sociologist Carolyn Ellis. When I enter and look around the room, I feel an aura of anticipation circling the atmosphere, as if something out of the ordinary is about to happen. When Carolyn begins to speak, my heart flutters, as if it is skipping beats. From my seat in the back of the room, I take note of her magnetic energy, feeling as if I'm being pulled across the room toward her. I recall thinking to myself, this feels more like a dance than a lecture. Carolyn, absorbed in the moment, basking in the glow of the attentive eyes cast on her. But make no mistake about it, this was a serious talk that challenged ingrained and deep-seated prejudices against the intrusion of introspection, emotionality, and subjectivity into scientific sociology. It was a risky presentation in which Carolyn shared stories from her experience as a caregiver of her partner who died after a long struggle with emphysema, and the sudden loss of her beloved younger brother, Rex, who was killed in an airplane crash over the Potomac River on his way to see her. You don't often see these kind of presentations in a university lecture. Carolyn invited her listeners to enter these experiences with her and the other people in her stories, feeling what they might have felt, or imagining yourself. What would you do in such situations? This way, she said, you have your own emotions to examine, which is the best way I know to convey to you what emotions feel like. Carolyn didn't try to sugarcoat the heartbreaking struggles with loss in which she had been immersed. Wrestling against emptiness and isolation. Fighting to create meaning and purpose out of a still young life that had been besieged by death and saturated with grief. When Carolyn ended her talk by confiding that I needed to write these stories, to work through my pain and be transformed by the truth of these stories, I felt a rush of optimism rushing through my body. Yes! This is what social science could be, what it needs to be in order to make a difference in the world. Daring, intimate, embodied, and evocative. The stories Carolyn was telling were not so much about people as on behalf of them, with them. And that is one of the chief ways I would characterize the whole body of Carolyn's work. Her authority is the authority of the person who has been there or been with, on the scene, witnessing, first as a person giving living testimony, and more recently, as in the research she will be talking about today, as one who enters long-lasting collaborations with other witnesses or survivors that becomes what I would call a relationship of communicative bodies in which she, as a compassionate researcher, communes with other people's pain and suffering in order to learn together, participant with researcher, what really matters in this life we call human. Why is Carolyn Ellis's research distinguished? You will have an opportunity today to answer that question for yourself. The university as a meritocracy has its own criteria. These metrics are not secret. To achieve the rank of distinguished university professor, you are judged by peer experts across the country, around the globe, and by colleagues holding that highest rank at USF. Fewer than 1% of the faculty ever achieve the honorific ranking of distinguished professor. According to Google Scholar, Carolyn's publications have been cited by other scholars over 7,500 times. She has been honored with Career Achievement Awards from the National Communication Association, the International Congress of Qualitative Inquiry, and other divisions in other associations. Her books, 4 different books, have won Best Book of the Year awards from the Ethnography Division of NCA twice, the Society for the Study of Symbolic Interaction, the American Sociological Association's section of Urban and Community Sociology, and the International Congress of Qualitative Inquiry. And she has received NCA's Charles Wolbert Award for research that has stood the test of time. Among her dozens of invited lectures around the world are keynotes to conferences in South Africa, Poland, New Zealand, Finland, Canada, Malaysia, and Israel. In Carolyn's case, however, the number of books, articles, chapters, keynotes, and awards, they don't really tell the story. An academic can accumulate a lot of lines on a vita without necessarily having produced all that much of importance. How much or how many is not nearly as important as how meaningful, how life-changing. What difference does it make in people's lives? How useful is it? Academics often, too often, in my opinion, are judged by how smart they are or they seem, how critically they can think or theorize, or how much money they can secure in grants. Too often, though, we ignore the human side of the scholar. What values does this person stand for or behind? What kind of a heart and soul does she have? What has she given back to the people she has studied? How do her students feel about and connect with her after they graduate? It is all well and good to exercise the intellect, and certainly there are plenty of mind games played in university classrooms. But if we ignore the heart, the spirit, and the emotions of our students, how are we contributing to the development of a whole integrated person? From that first time I ever laid eyes and opened ears to Carolyn Ellis, she made it clear to me that she believed the university should be a nurturing environment that prepares students through compassionate research and teaching to cope with things that will be coming up in their lives. These human things, subjectivity, heart, compassion, and a capacity to love and to care deeply about things that matter are what make the human sciences human. And that, in my opinion, is what distinguishes Carolyn Ellis, which her lecture today, Taking Heart, Doing Compassionate Research with a Holocaust Survivor, will exemplify. Please join me in welcoming distinguished university professor Carolyn Ellis.
Can you see why I like that guy? Thank you, Art, for that introduction. And I also want to thank you for all the support and care that you've given me as I've done this project. And I also want to say that the 25 years of working together with Art has, laid the groundwork for this kind of work. We've really done it together, and so this is just an extension of all that we have been doing together. I also want to thank Provost Wilcox and Vice Provost Dwayne Smith for their support of this lecture. And I want to thank Rosie Lopez, who assisted me along the way and answered all my questions, which were many. And also I want to call attention to Jane Duncan and Nafa Falogo, who are back here videotaping the lecture for the library. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to be here, especially on a Friday afternoon. I am honored indeed to have been given the title of Distinguished University Professor and to have the opportunity to give this lecture today to tell you about something that is so dear to my heart. I have been at USF for 35 years now, so I guess I'm an old-timer in every sense of the word. But I am extremely proud and appreciative of all that the university has given me. I really am. During much of my career, first as a sociologist and then later also as a communication scholar, I have been interested in the lived experiences of emotion, especially grief, loss, and trauma, and also as they are viewed through a humanistic lens and an ethnographic lens. So today I want to talk about a project that incorporates all those perspectives and interests. For the last 7 years, I have worked with Holocaust survivors, as Art told you. In 2009, I partnered with the Florida Holocaust Museum and the USF Library to interview more than 40 local survivors. I followed the model used by the Show of Visual History Foundation, which was founded by Steven Spielberg. This group has recorded approximately 52,000 of the 100,000 interviews of survivors that we have available. In our initial project, the doctoral students and I studied the historical context for each survivor. Then we asked prepared questions that were organized chronologically about the experience pre, during, and then post-Holocaust, though we focused on the Holocaust, as did the Shoah interviewers. Each interview lasted several hours and was videotaped and transcribed by library staff here with the excellent help of Jane and Nafa in the back. That project was life-changing for me, and it made me aware of the short time that we have now to hear stories directly from those involved in the Holocaust. Wanting to feel that I had left no stone unturned in gathering stories from survivors, I began to think about ways to bring forth accounts that had been untold or that might be different from those voiced in traditional question and answer oral interviews. I wondered if I could create in the research process an opportunity for survivors to revise, develop, and analyze their stories rather than tell them once in a sit-down, face-to-face interview. I also wondered whether there were ways to listen better and more deeply, which might provide a more positive experience for survivors, one that might contribute in some way to their lives. Jerry Rawicki, a survivor of the Warsaw Ghetto, was the second person that I interviewed in 2009. I was impressed with Jerry, with his passion in telling his story and with his openness to sharing his feelings as he talked. I noted right away that Jerry didn't tell an already constructed story, as is easy to do when you're asked to tell it time and time again. Instead, he explored his story with me, delighted in the process of discovery as we talked, and he even questioned his own memory and challenged his own interpretations, as he later would probe mine. Thus, I quickly knew I wanted to do more work with him. Thankfully, he was enthusiastic about spending time with me and exploring his experiences more fully. I am delighted to tell you that Jerry is here today, and I know that some of you got to meet Jerry. Jerry is a very young 88-year-old, soon to be 89-year-old survivor. I don't think he minds that I tell his age. I think he's proud of it, as he should be. He is a remarkable human being, a person you want to get to know better and have as a friend, the kind of respondent every researcher hopes to have as a research partner. He is intelligent, insightful, and intuitive, an excellent storyteller and analyst, a good listener and conversationalist. The way his gentle sensitivity and passionate emotionality blend with his amazing strength is remarkable. When Jerry and I teamed up to continue this work, we quickly became friends. We enjoyed being together, and we shared a dedication to learning through storytelling and conversation. I have lost count of how many times we have met, certainly greater than 50, and maybe a whole lot more than that. We email almost daily, and we catch up on the phone. We hold formal videotaped interview sessions, and we have close to 100 hours of transcripts and video footage. We have participated in activities such as videotaping our conversations as we walk through the Florida Holocaust Museum. We co-write and publish articles, and we give joint presentations on our work. One time, Jerry even gave a presentation in my place when I was unable to go to an academic conference because of illness. And he was great, and everybody told me that it was the best keynote they had ever heard. And just as often, we hang out, or we eat at Carrabba's, Jerry's favorite restaurant, sometimes even splitting a bottle of Stella. That is, if I'm driving. During those times, we have spirited discussion about politics, the novel he is writing, and our work together, or we might seek advice from each other about personal matters. A highlight of our joint work took place in 2013 when I accompanied Jerry on his return to his home country of Poland for the first time since he left at the age of 21. While in Poland, we made a film about his experiences in Warsaw, entitled Behind the Wall. This film features Jerry located on the sites where some of the Holocaust trauma took place for him. He tells stories stimulated by place memory and explores his past and feelings about forgiveness toward his homeland. We also visited the city where Jerry was born, and what became the most emotional experience we had ever shared, we went to Treblinka, the site of the death camp where his mother and sister were killed in gas chambers. You will hear more about this visit later. When Jerry and I began this project, I had some ideas about what I hoped would happen and why. But I also was open, as was he, to letting the process and our relationship emerge. Let me mention briefly some of the premises I started with or developed early on to provide for you some context of my work. Number one, I understood from experience that stories are told differently in give and take conversations than they are in traditional interviews. In conversations, your story is affected by the questions someone asks, the experiences they offer, and the responses they give to your stories, which then might generate untold accounts or further thoughts. Number two, I understood that stories are told differently in developing relationships. As your relationship grows and trust is built, you are likely to share more intimately. You also might engage in mutual rather than one-way sharing. In so doing, a storyteller has an opportunity to work through the story in ways not possible with a stranger asking questions in a single interview. Number three, talking with survivors of trauma raises many ethical considerations. It is more likely that a researcher will be able to respond to the complexities of doing ethical research on trauma if a close relationship has developed with the storyteller. because then you have the opportunity to read the participant in more nuanced ways. This helps you better determine what is most appropriate to ask, how to follow up on ideas, and when to back off. And it makes you aware of questions and topics that might make a participant feel too vulnerable. Number 4, maintaining a close relationship between researcher and respondent where friendship develops along with the research project means that there is no leaving the field of research. In my case, I plan to continue spending time with Jerry as long as we're both around and he is still willing to talk to me. Number 5, in the last few years, I have concentrated on survivors' post-Holocaust experiences. First, because researchers have not been as focused on that time of their life as on the period of the Holocaust. But more importantly, I am interested in long-term grief and responses to trauma, and survivors are experts in that arena, having lived so long with unimaginable and intense grief and loss. So I wanted to learn from Jerry about how he had coped all these years. Number 6. One of the goals of my work has been to interact with survivors in ways that honor, care for, and support them as they reflect on the tragedies they have endured. I wanted to be someone Jerry could talk to about how his life now intersects with his experiences during the Holocaust. I wanted to support him, to be his friend through the joys and sorrows of later life, and share my experiences with him. I hope that our work might renew and contribute to purpose in his life. Number 7, in thinking about how to work with survivors in meaningful ways, I came to view my project as working with survivors rather than doing research on them. Jerry is my research partner, not my subject. Thus, collaborating and including his voice on this research became imperative. Number 8, I wanted to call on survivors to be more than storytellers and to participate as well in the analysis of their experience. Academics assume that their respondents tell stories, and then we academics analyze them and decide what it all means. But I believe survivors have profound understandings about what their stories mean, and that including their thoughts will make any analysis that I do deeper and more significant to more audiences. Number 9, I wanted to do work that has the possibility of making a positive difference to audiences and the community of survivors. I seek to make this difference by telling one story about one life at a time. And finally, number 10, I wanted to try new forms, to write short stories and show them visually in documentaries and film clips, which are modes of presentation that might be more accessible and engaging to more people than 200 pages of unedited transcripts or snippets of stories organized to demonstrate a researcher's conclusion. I call this approach compassionate interviewing and storytelling. I pull from Carol Gilligan's and Nell Nodding's notions of ethics of care. The term I use, relational ethics of care, emphasizes the role of connection and feeling in the principles that guide my work. I concentrate on the way people relate with one another in their various roles and commitments. I ask, what is going on here? What is needed to make this interaction go well? To honor the other person. And as Hillary Clinton advocates for American politics, I too desire to bring more love and kindness into what we do and who we are as researchers. This project then takes heart in many different ways. I take heart and feel encouraged from the work that Jerry and I do together. It takes heart, mutual vulnerability and care on both sides to make this research successful. And each and every day, when I spend time with Jerry and hear his stories, this project opens and takes my heart. Today in this lecture, I want to explore the following questions. How does compassionate research take place in practice? What does it mean? how does it feel, and what decisions have to be made as we form relationships and relate in a mindful manner to our participants, moment by moment, situation by situation. Compassionate research involves a continuous process of participating in each other's lives, where the research becomes part of the friendship and the friendship part of the method. Though it entails gathering information about the topic being explored, it also means providing the opportunity for ongoing meta-communication about the research endeavor itself. The researcher must check often on the well-being of her research partner, monitoring that she is not asking questions or presenting material that might re-traumatize the storyteller or make him too uncomfortable. She must ensure that she and her co-researcher continue to share a mutual understanding and agreement about the process. And she must consider the effects of the researcher on herself and those who will encounter or be affected by her work. I often engage in meta-communication, meta-conversations with Jerry about our research process, and I am open to backing up, changing directions, or doing whatever is necessary to make sure all is as well as it can be. Thus, in addition to talking about the Holocaust and his post-Holocaust life, Jerry and I also have conversations about what we are doing together. Do we share goals? Have the purposes for either of us changed along the way? How does he see and feel now about what we are doing? What is going on in his life and mine that might affect what we talk about and how we talk? What does he need from me now, and is he okay? These conversations keep me informed of Jerry's point of view, make me think and rethink my research stance, help me see and appreciate the nuances of compassionate research, and provide opportunities for me to be a more sensitive researcher and friend. So what I want to do now is move from just talking to show you a few clips about where Jerry and I discuss what we do together so that you will get to see him as well.
I know that you're interested because you are, not only, we don't always talk, when you interview me, when you tape it, but whether you tape it or maybe in a social occasion, I can see your interest in it because I see the look in your face, you look at me, and you're not distracted by anything because many people, I can, when being that survivor, people naturally ask questions and they are interested. And I can see when a person is interested or is just ask the questions and just as if the person wouldn't even would be interested in a thing. The importance to the person was asking the questions, not listening to the thing. You have, I've been looking for it in you, but you don't do it. You are very intent on sort of hearing everything that I say, whether it's on a tape or without a tape. So that's why I can see that.
What I want to do, and it's not so much that I have to make the effort because I just do it. I want to be here, just like I said, that you were very present. I want to be very present. So when I'm with you, I want to be just with you. I don't want to be thinking about anything else or what else I have to do. I want to be right here with you.
Yeah, and you certainly are, because when I look at you, or being with you at the interview, you are completely engrossed into it. Just like it was the most important thing in your life. But at this point, it is important to you, and you show it, and that's why I can see it, and that's what puts me in the same mood, so to speak. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm so responsive to you, because I know that you are interested, and you, not as a person, not as an academician, not as a professor of ethnography, but you are just interested. As much as I like to talk or to say what I'm saying, but just as much I'm looking forward to see what the next questions will be.
Yes.
Because I know it will let me, give me an occasion to say something that maybe I have never said before. You know, that's why I'm looking for your questions, just just as intensely as I do conduct myself when I talk about it. You know.
So, and that's part of what I also appreciate, that you are looking for discovery.
Exactly.
Yes, but what can I discover about my experience? So it's not just I'm going to tell about my experience in a way that I've told about it before, but you want to know, what can I learn about my experience through this conversation?
I'm doing it every time. I'm learning with every word that is said. I'm learning not only about the subject, but also about myself, about my emotions, about my feelings. Sometimes an interview gives me an idea to, take, like an inventory of what I can, what I have in me, and what I can express, and it is very, very helpful. It's very teaching, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you and I have the same goal. We're both, we both want to know about experience and feelings, and we both want to see what can we learn about this in this
Yeah.
conversation.
So the most delicate topic that Jerry and I discuss is the murder of his mother and sister at Treblinka. Now, almost every time the subject comes up, Jerry becomes emotional. He shows his emotion because the topic is profoundly disturbing to him, and because he enters the experience deeply when he thinks and talks about it. I also sometimes feel emotional when we talk about the losses, because, how could I not? I care about him, and I care about and mourn this historical tragedy. So what do we do when emotions rise to the surface? Most interviewers, including those on the Shoah Project, are taught to pause if the interviewee becomes emotional, keep their own emotions under control, resist the urge to comfort verbally or physically, and wait until the respondent can continue with the story. But because Jerry is so emotionally open, and because of the trauma associated with this topic, I seek to respond to what each situation seems to call for, rather than follow a set of guidelines. After all, that's what being in relationship is all about. So next I want to show you just two brief scenes that were emotional, and both of them were about Treblinka. The first is in an interview setting, and then the second is in a class that I am teaching, which of course adds a whole nother layer of consideration.
Well, this is something that has puzzled me and probably you too. There are certain things that they are not as I thought. This is a tremendous opportunity for me because I never really talked about it to anybody, or to you especially. I don't know why certain events evoke that emotion. We're talking about it when I become weepy, when I choke up. I cannot talk. I have to take a few minutes to sort of recover. But there are some things that are worse, like this thing being in Treblinka. Then I know one of you asked me about the overwhelmed and underwhelmed. I think that Treblinka episode was one that was by far most overwhelming thing, because that was just like
learned from Jerry to cry and then go on. So I will go on. It was one of the most overwhelming experiences of my life, really. So, I mean, I think especially in the last clip where we were talking about having returned to Treblinka, you can see my discomfort, but also my need to control my emotion, and partly because I am in the role of teacher, and so that requires that I honor the definition of the situation and perceived sensibilities of how interaction is supposed to take place in a classroom setting. Yet I still comfort Jerry and I express my emotion. And by the way, you don't see it here, but the students really responded to this emotionally as well. And we had just one of the most beautiful moments in a classroom that I've ever had. And the other thing that I want to say about this clip in particular is that both of us do control our emotion. I mean, we don't just break down and sob. Maybe we will at some point, but that's not what we do. And I don't do that because I don't want Jerry to think that he has to take care of me at those times, And I also don't want to make him reluctant to talk about his pain because he is concerned about how his stories make me feel. So I certainly hold back. And Jerry holds back because he's afraid it will interfere with his telling of the story and doing it as well as he can. There was one time in a classroom, Jerry was in the classroom, and there was another survivor in the classroom, and the other survivor broke down telling her story, and she got very upset with herself for breaking down, and we asked her why, and she said, well, it's because, the unwarranted perception of Jews as being passive and not doing anything to fight back in the Holocaust, that bothers me, and I'm afraid if I get emotional in these situations, I will just be seen as weak. And so the class had a huge discussion about all this, where we tried to say to them, and I think they heard us, that in both cases, the emotion helps tell a story that brings the audience into the experience in a visceral and deep way. And it also presents them as people who are strong enough to let themselves be vulnerable. And I truly do feel that way about these stories, and my students certainly say the same thing often. Now, of course, at the same time that I am open to emotions in interviews, I'm also concerned that the topics we discuss and the questions that I ask not add to Jerry's pain.
I never want to cause you pain or agony, but it is painful by definition, the questions I'm asking.
No, but, to answer your question, I never felt any pain. You don't inflict any pain, no matter what you say, how much tough the question may be, either to you or to me. It's painless. Mm-hmm. It's the way you posited it. But as far as I'm concerned, no, I'm very comfortable with it. And as I say, sometimes I'm challenged, sometimes I require a little bit more, of thinking how to answer it, but never challenged or never surprised by it or anything like that,
The other part of this is I wonder sometimes when I ask you to relive your experiences, like I was asking you about being at Treblinka, and I could see that, that did cause you some emotion, and then I wonder, well, is that a good thing to ask you to do, or does that just make you feel, relive the pain again?
No. Of course, I don't know if you are aware of it or not, but when you ask a question like this, you ask in a different tone,
Oh, interesting.
The way you, sometimes, when we talk, sometimes it's almost jocular,
Yeah.
But when you said that, the minute you mentioned the thing, the word Treblinka, your voice is completely different. It's the tone of the voice, or what they call it, the timbre. Yeah, it's different. It's different inflection. So this puts me just at ease. Well, of course, I know why are you asking me that? So no, this is one of the part of the compassions.
Yeah.
The tone of
Yeah,
it,
isn't that interesting? It gets softer.
it's definitely
Slower.
yeah. Softer is probably it's more compassionate, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's there is a different inflection, you know, of the voice, and plus, of course, when you ask about it, I can see your eyes too. The expression, you know, eyes are very expressive, you know. Uh, as a retired optician, I can talk about eyes, not about expressionists, but but this is it's the totality of it, you know. It's the voice, it's the interest, it's the eyes. It's all a part of expressing a compassion for the person, for the subject that you interview.
I feel emotionally connected to you, and I feel that I'm trying to. I want to enter this conversation with you, but I want to give you space so that you can pull back if you want.
Yes, yes.
So
yeah.
so it's not in any kind of aggressive way. It's very. I almost pull back and say, here it is if you'd like to do it, but you don't have to do this.
Exactly. Yes, it's.
And I feel like I know, and this is to me part of compassionate interviewing, is that you do have to have a relationship with the person, because I feel like I know you well enough that I can sense what some of what you're going through, and I can sense when it's too difficult.
Yes.
I'm constantly trying to read you, like where you are, and have my sense of where you are help me determine the level of question to ask you.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to me, like the Treblinka one has always been the most difficult thing to talk about, and so I get very careful when we broach that topic.
So, as you can see, Treblinka came up a whole lot in these clips. And I want to end now by sharing with you a story that I wrote about the trip that I took with Jerry to Treblinka in 2013. And as you know, Jerry is in the audience. Some of you might wonder, how he feels to hear the story of something so painful for him. And of course, I also wonder that as well. So let me address this issue before I show the film. As a compassionate researcher, I feel it is part of my responsibility, whenever possible, to consult with participants prior to presenting or publishing work about their experiences. After I first wrote this story a little over a year ago, I was concerned that some of the trauma described in detail would be upsetting to Jerry, so I emailed him. And I said, I want to make sure you're okay with this story I have written about Treblinka. I have pretty explicit description in one paragraph of the murdering there, and I am afraid it will unnecessarily upset you. My inclination is to take out that paragraph before I send it to you. Its absence won't interrupt the story. Jerry wrote back, Carolyn, do not delete a single syllable in your paper. Though the pain will never cease, by now I am inured to all the tragedies of the Holocaust. Nothing will ever assuage the memory of the night when I realized I would never see my mother and sister ever again. So please make your writing as vivid as you possibly can, even as you have to draw on your personal tragedy the way you described it in your book, Final Negotiations, or as I remember the airplane plunging into the Potomac River from your story about your brother's death. Then, after Jerry read the story, he said, I want to ask you a little bit about, I wrote the story about us going to Treblinka, and I wanted to get your response to that story.
Well, first of all, when I knew that you wrote it, and when you were sending it to me, I, 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 when I was thinking about it with some trepidation because I thought maybe I'll just break down and again, like I've known to do before. But then I thought the picture of it was so vivid and so complete and so much, out of the author's heart that I thought I have to take it as such. And it was a beautiful thing to me, although to beautiful, to use the adjective beautiful, describing such a terrible visit to a cemetery of my kin. Maybe it's sacrilegious, but it's blasphemous. But I read it, and every word of it, it was just like a stroke of a beautiful pen. And the memory that should have been there was just in the fragments. Some of the things I remember, some of them not. Because again, sometimes the weight of the material is actually crushing me. It is just too much. That's why this was probably the most Treblinka was one of the most terrible chapter in my life.
Because it so totally overwhelmed you emotionally that you were not taking in any of the other cues. You were not observing in the way that you normally observe.
No.
So you didn't remember. I remember you asking me, well, who was there?
Yeah.
And you didn't remember the details that you would just normally take in. You didn't take them in because you were so overwhelmed by your emotions.
Overwhelmed is the word that I was going to use. As a matter of fact, you asked me, I didn't know whether my children, who of my grandchildren was there. All I saw, almost throughout, picture of my mother and my sister.
That's what you were seeing in your mind, yeah.
This was sometimes with you see this photographic memory, it worked over time. I could see that, I could see them.
Because your memory, that's interesting. So it was just, your memory was just overwhelming you. Yeah.
I was seeing them, in, of course, the way I always saw them, but I saw them on the way to the final day of their lives, and that's why I didn't remember that. As a matter of fact, I looked at the stones and all that, and you had to call my attention to the fact that there was a stone with the name of the town that they were. Yeah. I remember I was holding to you and Joanna because it was raining. It was very nasty day and it was slippery and all that. But I remember that I was, so maybe I did see it, but you had to really jog my memory to see, this is it.
Yeah, because your attention was on your feeling at that moment.
Yeah.
And my reaction was emotional, but I was observing. I was looking to see, I wanted to make sure you were as okay as you could be, and that, that I was doing
For my
what I was
physical,
doing.
you were concerned about my physical well-being, mostly, yes.
I was, yeah.
And then, of course, the way that you, the title of the article, which of course you attributed to my daughter-in-law, it was very, very telling, the article too, because you described the whole emotionality of the day.
Yeah.
It was all from the heart. It was nothing really, nobody was did something over there that was premeditated, that was contrived. It was something that was really, it was a bundle of feelings.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I wanted it to be.
Yeah,
'Cause
and you really did it exactly. And the title was a very apt title.
It was,
This-
wasn't
yes,
it?
yeah,
Groaning from the Soul.
yeah.
That's a good title. Yeah. Well, it was interesting because that day I was so emotional, but I also tried to still keep observing what was going on. So a month ago then, when I decided to put the story on film for this presentation with images from our visit to Treblinka, and I knew that Jerry would be here, I wrote to him again. Dear Jerry, I want you to see these film clips before you come to the talk, because I don't want them to surprise you there. There might be some images of you at Treblinka which you have not seen before, which will be shown as I read the story on video. If you have any hesitation about this, let me know, okay? I'm depending on you to always be upfront with me about your feelings. Dear Carolyn, go ahead and make the presentation as powerful as possible. In my meditations, though I don't mention it by name, Treblinka is always on my mind. I see my being there on film as an homage, not a parade. A few weeks then before this talk, I showed the rough footage of the film to Jerry so that we both would feel comfortable about viewing it today. So now I want to end this talk with this 12-minute film I've been talking about, which my research partner, Steve Shane, who I see is sitting in the back with his hand up. I couldn't do this without him. He and I put this together. Now you will hear the story that I wrote about visiting Treblinka with Jerry. You also will see images, most of which I took with a little handheld camera on that visit. That visit, being there with Jerry in this emotional space, was a watershed moment for me. Suddenly, I was in an emotional space with Jerry deeper than anything I had ever imagined. Being there and working through what happened in story and feeling was a defining event and solidifying the depth of my friendship with Jerry. This event also helped me think through what compassionate research could mean, what its possibilities were, and the perils, problems, and joys of engaging in such an intimate research experience. As I cautioned Jerry, this is a difficult piece to hear and see, with a few ghastly descriptions of murder and emotional images of grieving. Some researchers critique using these images in our stories, and they say that we should respect the void of the unspeakable nature of the Holocaust. My philosophy is more akin to Charlotte Delbo's, who was a death camp survivor. She advises us to try to look, just try and see. As an ethnographer, that is what I try to do, to look, see, and feel, exploring what goes on in my surroundings and in my heart and mind, and what I see and imagine goes on for Jerry as he and I move through Treblinka. I now invite you to do the same. Groaning from the soul. Arm in arm, we cautiously yet rhythmically make our way over the uneven cobblestones toward the memorial at Treblinka. To steady Jerry, I grasp his left arm tightly. His daughter-in-law, Joanna, does the same with his right. 3 of Jerry's grandchildren and our guide traverse the path ahead of us. Jerry, Joanna, and I slowly follow the trail bordered by large egg-shaped stones symbolizing the barbed-wired boundaries of the camp. We walk alongside the row of railroad ties carved of concrete representing the path of the old railroad tracks. Momentarily, I conjure the image of the trains arriving there during the Holocaust, and of the people's terror as they were herded down the road to heaven to their fates at this death camp, the men shoved to the right and the women and children to the left. To be showered and deloused, they were told. From the exhibits at the small museum we visited and the history I have read, I know that approximately 800,000 people died in Treblinka, almost all immediately upon arrival. I visualized the crowds getting off at the fake train station with the fake clock and fake ticket window casting a last ray of hope. How much worse could this be than the long journey in a crowded boxcar with dehydrated and emaciated people defecating and dying during the trip? They soon would find out. I wonder if Jerry and Joanna are thinking similar thoughts as we walk quietly toward the monument. The silence feels overwhelming, and a sense of tragedy permeates the air. A slight wind blows and birds chirp, but I quickly block them out, pushing away any semblance of peacefulness that threatens to permeate the edge of this dense forest on a summer day. The atmosphere and the slow, steady pace remind me of the many times I have walked the hill to the burial site in my hometown, where my mother, father, brother, and aunt are laid to rest. Oh, how I miss them at this moment. I wonder, is there any rest here? I can feel Jerry's tenseness, apprehension, and sadness through my arm linked with his, and I am aware of and share his desire and reluctance to approach the towering monument up ahead. Please may he find here some sense of what he is looking for, be it peace, connection, or release of grief. He may have no idea of what to hope for. I know I don't. I am just glad to be here with him on this journey. Though I think of videotaping, my camera hangs by my side. After quickly filming the entryway, I intuit that it is disrespectful to turn it on, to record this emotional, spiritual, and sacred experience. After 10 minutes, we see ahead the garden of approximately 17,000 multi-shaped and multicolored rocks, ranging from the size of a hand to a large tombstone. I take a deep breath and imagine the piles of burning bodies in the mass graves. I imagine the women waiting in line, naked, their heads shaven, holding their babies close to their chests as long as they can, while the men are gassed first, their moans and screams shattering any remnant of hope. 15 to 20 minutes is all it took. Did it seem a lifetime or a quick moment to them? Maybe both. I imagine the women and children now herded into the gas chambers after the men were shoveled out in heaps on the other side, some still gasping. I imagine the children, the ones who had not already been flung against walls, their brains splattering, tossed in on top of the women, who were made to stand with their hands in the air to make room for more bodies. I don't fully understand why, but I must make myself imagine the horror, though I know, and I am glad that I really cannot. We talk quietly as we walk, commenting on what we see in front of us. Jerry stops several times to blow his nose. I feel like I'm finally able to pay my respects, he says, to come to their grave. If only there was a marker. Maybe we can find the Badzitten stone, I say, remembering that 130 markers are engraved with the names of the towns of the victims. Badzitten is the location of the small ghetto from which Jerry's mother and younger sister were taken. Delineating the extermination camp, the symbolic gravestones spread out in a circular formation in front of us as far as the eye can see. I fear I have raised Jerry's hopes in vain. Still, it's worth a try. If the stone is here, I'm determined to find it. As we enter the garden, I begin scanning the jagged rocks. Quickly, I see what appears to be Badzitten imprinted in large letters on a 4-foot-high marker. Could that be? Come this way, I say to Jerry. I think I see Badzitten. "What?" asked Jerry, cupping his ear. "Then stay here a moment," I motion, fearing I am wrong and not wanting him to make the trek for nothing. I quickly approach the stone, and I see that, yes, Bodzinten is engraved on its front. "I found the Bodzinten marker," I say to Jerry and Joanna when I return. "Really?" Jerry says. His face lights up for a moment before the tears start to fall. "Where?" "Over there." Jerry walks in the direction I point, and Joanna and I rush to hold on to him. "Bodzinten, there it is," Joanna says as we approach the rock. She and I support Jerry until he can lean on the tombstone-shaped marker. He begins to weep, and we begin to cry quietly as he hangs his head over the stone and touches it reverently. We take turns gently rubbing his back to let him know we are there, then move away to give him a sense of privacy. Continuing to weep, Jerry lovingly traces each of the engraved letters with the tips of his fingers. His grandson, a brother in the Catholic Church, approaches and prays aloud with him. I note the small pebbles that visitors have left on top of the marker, signifying permanence and a reminder to all who arrive that others have been here as well, and that we are connected and continue through memory. Our guide from Warsaw stands apart watching the scene. I think of our drive here and how the guide's commentary was halted when Jerry said his mother and sister had died in Treblinka. The guide turned to Jerry then and began asking him questions. If he had not identified Jerry as a mourning survivor, he likely would be talking to us now, describing what we are seeing as though we were tourists. Instead, he gives us time to grieve on our own. He acknowledges the sacredness of our being there, that it is an event in need of no words. From a respectful distance, the guide takes a video of Jerry at the stone. Joanna also steps back and snaps a few iPad photos of Jerry. With that, I feel I have permission to record the scene, though I too move away and film Jerry for only a short time. Listening to the video later, I hear weeping and sniffling, and it takes a while to recognize the sounds as mine. Even as I write this, I sigh and feel deep sadness, which I experience as a heaviness in my body, an emptiness in my stomach, and tightness in my chest. Jerry turns away from the marker and signifies with a nod that he is ready to go. "Finally, I have been able to grieve," he says. "Before I didn't have a place to come to. No cemetery, nothing." Joanna and I link to his arms again, and we wander with no purpose around the cemetery, commenting on the names of the stones. We walk toward the tall monument in the center of the garden. Standing at the site of the former gas chamber, the granite tower is shaped like a tall tombstone with a crack down the middle, and capped by a mushroom-shaped block covered with carvings of a menorah and Jewish symbols. Without a word, we then turn back, foregoing a visit to the pits of mass graves, the sunken sculpture that marks the site where the bodies were burned, and the labor camp section of Treblinka. We start the long trek back to the car, along the same railroad tracks that brought Jerry's mother and sister to their deaths. Jerry will say later, "The railroad tracks were the hardest part, as I imagine my mother and sister arriving in the boxcar. The death itself," he will add, "was swift. At least I hope it was, and I hope they already had lost their minds from shock, so they did not know what was happening." When Jerry sighs with relief, I consider turning on the video camera, but that would be intrusive, I think, and might interrupt the solemn and contemplative mood. Besides, I can't point the camera toward him and continue holding his arm. It is most important to be with Jerry, to support and feel with him. I am honored that he invited me to be part of this experience. It seems irreverent to risk making a spectacle out of his grief. I know now that my decision to forego bringing a film crew on this part of our trip together was the right one. We walk a ways in silence. Still, wanting to have a record of this moment, I think that perhaps Jerry and his family might want one as well. I turn on my palm-sized video camera and continue walking with it pointed toward our feet to unobtrusively record the sounds of our steps and our words. After a while, we began to talk about suffering, ongoing genocide, relief from grief through death, and Treblinka as a memorial. When Jerry says he wishes he could pray better, Joanna replies that prayer is groaning from the soul. It's not the words that matter. When I left Bud Zenton, I knew I would never see them again, Jerry says, a moan escaping from deep in his throat. I feel close to them now, being here. They must be smiling, I say. What? Asked Jerry. Your mother and sister, to have you here with your daughter-in-law, your wonderful grandchildren. It signifies that their deaths were not in vain. You survived. You survived, I repeat with emphasis on you. And through you, their memories live on. Jerry nods. Then, do you hear the birds? I ask Jerry, suddenly becoming aware of the chirping. He says, yes. Their song is beautiful, I say, and he agrees. We walk and listen quietly to the serenade.
The tall ones is barbed wire.